A SEGA Genesis Mini review.
They could do all kinds of stuff inside this ATGames. All right, here we go.
Wait, ATGames isn't on this project. I'm in. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, SEGA did send over the Genesis Mini for me to take a look at, and honestly, I've been looking forward to this. Again, ATGames isn't attached to this, and they've made some pretty junky devices in the past, I think is putting it lightly. But I was excited when SEGA decided to break up with ATGames and work with M2 on the emulation, and it seemed like they were putting a lot of time and effort into this device. So today, I get to tell you some of my thoughts around it so far in a preview. Again, not a review, a preview. And we'll open it up and take a look inside as well, because no one seemed to be able to tell me if I was allowed to open it up, so I opened it up. So first things first, it's going to retail for $79.99, and it's going to release September 19th. So next month, it will be out to the public, and you can pick it up. It's going to come with 42 games. Originally, it was supposed to be 40. However, SEGA decided to drop in 2 extra games, Tetris and Darius. Darius is from the arcade, and Tetris is a game that only a handful of them that's worth a lot of money are actually out to the public right now on the Genesis, and I guess they decided to drop it in there. So let's take a look at this system, and we'll go ahead and start by unboxing it. And first thing I want to say is the box itself looks really, really nice. Like, looking around it, it has that 90s nostalgia feel, but it does have some modern conveniences, like obviously the teen rating, for example, and then they also talk about HDMI and other things as well. So it does have a little bit of modern flair here and there, but for the most part, it does remind me of the 90s. On the back, they have all of the different games listed very easily with their box art, which is cool. It's fun seeing something like I said, Tetris, Darius on the back, or Wily Wars, which is the one game I really wanted to play on here, but we'll get to some of the games in a little bit. Opening up at the top, they did package everything very nicely, which is going to be a bit of a theme going through this video. It's going to be attention to detail in what I've seen here so far. And looking through it, we have 2 controllers. There are the 3-button variants that came with the original Model 1, and that does pose a problem with a few games. However, SEGA says that it is compatible with the Retrobit 6-button USB controllers, as they do run to USB, and from what I've seen, just plugging in a few controllers here and there for fun, it does seem to work, but, well, that compatibility is here and there. Some worked, some didn't, some had buttons in the wrong spots, but keep that in mind. If you want the 6-button, I guess the Retrobit is something to go with there. It also does come with a wall wart power supply. Good job, SEGA. Even you managed to do it, as opposed to, well, Sony, but it does come with that. It comes with HDMI, and of course the system, which is boxed up on its own. Again, nice little touch there to kind of protect it a bit further. And I have to say, looking at this system, it is awesome. Like, it looks so good. They just did so much here. I mean, like, the volume slider doesn't actually do anything. Like, on it, there's no real reason for it to be there other than the fact that, hey, we want this to look as authentic as possible. Even the cartridge flap there actually works. There's nothing there underneath of it. And then even on the underside part where you'd have the Sega CD plug-in, that piece of plastic also pops off. Again, just trying to make it feel like the original system, despite none of that stuff having functionality. Is it just extra stuff that doesn't need to be there? Yes, they could have just gotten away with just having, like, you know, like a plastic notch or something there to say, hey, this is where the CD would have plugged in, or this is where the cartridge would have sat. But they went a little further with it, and I can appreciate that from a quality standpoint. All around it, it's pretty straightforward. 2 USB ports on the front, and then on the back we have the micro or mini USB, and then we have HDMI, and that's pretty much it. It's a plug-and-play system. It's designed to plug it in and play it. The wall wart itself is rated at 5 volts, 1 amp, so it's pretty standard stuff. I guess if you lose it, you can get one very easily. Most cell phone adapters will power this thing, it seems, without too much issue. All right, now let's actually play the thing, because that's what a lot of people are wondering after the horror experiences that I've had with ATGames, right? I mean, just terrible, terrible emulation. I was pretty happy. I'm gonna say, so far, I played a lot of Wily Wars. I played other games as well. Of course, I fired up Tetris. It's Tetris, spoiler. I mean, yeah, the big thing around the Tetris game is that it was valuable because it was obscenely hard to find, as only a few copies leaked out while the other ones were supposed to be destroyed. But yeah, I played it, and it's just a poor version of Tetris, it seems. But still, it's there, it's fun, you know, it's an extra game. Darius is pretty cool because that's from the arcade, and it's a fun little shoot-'em-up game that I was playing quite a bit of. But I have to admit, I went back to the classics. Of course, I played a lot of Wily Wars, because if you remember, I wanted to see if there would be slowdown, and I'm happy to report that it runs much better on here than it does on the Genesis. The Repro copy that I have, it has slowdown and everything. This one seems to have much less slowdown. Like, it is way more playable than I remember. It's great. Like, it really is. It's fun now. Before it was aggravating, where a bunch of enemies get on screen and they would get down to like this choppy frame rate. And it's Mega Man. You don't want that. So I was having a blast with it, and I'm really happy to see that. I'm really happy that they went this far with it to bring in games like Wily Wars, which was only available at the time on the Sega channel. That went away, of course. Service-based games, digital future, good stuff. But it came back. It was, of course, out in Europe and everything for the Mega Drive. I'm so happy that Sega decided to go above and beyond with this system when it comes to those type of releases. They also grabbed a couple other things like Castlevania Bloodlines got thrown on there, which is another really good pickup. Monster World 4, great to see that on here, and just a ton of games. I went back and played Vector Man, played great. By the way, Vector Man was an awesome game when it came out. It really was. I mean, it's still fun now, but I remember like the big marketing push for this game was obscene, and some of you may remember it as well. The thing about this game is this system in these games is they're done really well. M2 has done a great job from what I've seen so far playing it. I'm going to be playing it quite a bit more throughout the month, but so far, M2 has done such a good job that it's made me so nostalgic now. And what's great is I can go back and play the games, right? Like, I was a Sega kid back in the day before I got a Super Nintendo. I went Nintendo, Sega, Genesis, and then Super Nintendo. But this has made me like so nostalgic for the old days. I do wish they had like Sonic 3 on there, or Sonic and Knuckles. I thought that would have been cool. I'm sure there were some issues there with Sonic and Knuckles, for example. And Sonic 3 is, we're not really even that sure about some of the licensing with the music and stuff in that, which sounds weird, but apparently that's a thing. So there were some omissions here, but for the most part, I think they nailed it with the game selection and the emulation. The one thing that I noticed when playing is that games like Eternal Champions or Street Fighter are going to be difficult to play with the 3-button controller. You're going to want a 6-button controller for those, because otherwise you're like pressing and holding start to do high punch and everything. It's very weird. That it was just Street Fighter on the 3-button Genesis was never good. We also have to go over some of the menu, because they did add in some cool functionality, but there are some things missing that kind of made me scratch my head a bit. For example, we can go in and we can choose between like 4:3, or we can stretch it to widescreen. I left it 4:3, and then you can also add a CRT filter on. But otherwise, that's kind of it. There's no like smoothing filter or anything like that. And I know people who do enjoy that for like a blown up TV, like you have a really, big screen TV and you want to smooth some of the hard edges and pixels out. I get why you would want that. But strangely, it's not here. And again, I'm not really sure why they didn't do that, but they didn't. So that's a strange thing. Also, while the background music is good through the menu, there is this really obnoxious tone every time you pick something in the menu, and it got old really fast. Like, really fast. I don't think you need that playing every time you hit a selection or cancel or anything like that. However, there were some other cool things. There were some cool things in the menu that I liked. Like when you press B when you're at the main menu, it'll take all of the games and flip them on their sides so you can pick through everything as like a spine setup. And that was great because it puts everything in front of you, it alphabetizes it, and if you just want to go to a game without thinking about it, or you want to kind of look through the library a bit easier, that was a really good way to do it. Made kind of jumping around much easier. And really, really cool thing I noticed was if you change the language setup. So if you go to Japanese or German or anything like that, it changes to the different regions. I put it in Japanese, and then I went back to the games, and everything had changed as if I was playing Japanese-based Mega Drive games. Like you can see the cover art changes, even the titles of the game changes. Yeah, like look at Bloodlines. That's right, it changes to Vampire Killer. Isn't that cool? I thought that was such a neat thing to see. And if you do the same thing going to like German, for example, all the box art will change to blue. Really, really nice little touch there, Sega, M2, and everyone. That's pretty cool to have that. Now let's go ahead and open up the system so you can see what's going on in there, because I do have a bit of a question about what's inside of this thing, because I can't find any information on this chip. I almost wonder if Sega, M2, and everyone worked together and got like a new chip that really has no information on it. It's very interesting to see this. So only 6 Phillips head screws hold it together. You could take the lid right off. One thing I want to point out, again, attention to detail. Looking at the LED, it's a little thing. It really is. And it's something most people won't notice, but it's important that like Sega decided to do this. They put like foam around the LED, and it's there to cut down on light bleed so that the light doesn't bleed out and you don't have like a dimmer LED on the front. Just, again, little things, attention to detail to make the overall product better. I wanted to point that out. But looking at it, there is a large heatsink, no fan or anything. This is similar to what the Super Nintendo Classic or the NES Classic does with a very large aluminum heatsink. And then when you remove that, you get a look at the chip, and I'm not really sure what this thing is. Now you can see the chip here. It's a Ziyuki C7213, and it is an all-winner chip, but there is no information on their website about it. In fact, they ask you to contact them, and even if I sent them an email, I haven't heard anything back. I'm mostly curious what this could be, if this is like a standard quad-core with like a Mali 400 GPU attached to it, or if it's something new that apparently the Genesis Mini is using first. I really couldn't find any information about this chip online. It appears to be paired with 256 megabytes of DDR3 memory, if I was reading that chip correctly, that's adjacent to it. So I'm not really sure what we have here. I'll be curious if people really get into hacking it and everything and they see what's going on in there, but interesting stuff here. Otherwise, we'll just have to see if it gets used in anything else or any future projects by Sega. But to use a brand new chip like this that I've ever seen is, again, a very interesting move. So while these were my initial impressions of the system and the time I've had with it playing games and checking it out overall, I have to say, so far, I'm really enjoying my time with it. Sure, I've been used to the bottom of the barrel stuff from ATGames, right, where the emulation was poor, the build quality was poor, everything about it was poor, but this is closer to, like, NES, Super Nintendo Classic quality, which is a big deal. So far, I like this more than the PlayStation Classic. Again, though, that's not saying much, but I will at least give Sony credit. Their PlayStation Classic, I think, had some of the best build quality I've ever seen. This might be second. I think this has better build quality than the Super Nintendo and Nintendo Classic, to be honest. Emulation will be put to the test, I'm sure, by people who are much more familiar with all of the little nuances than I am, and I would look out for that online. But so far, so good. Is it, so far, would I say it's worth $80? I mean, 42 games for $80, 2 controllers. I think most people are going to say yes, and from the emulation I've seen so far, yeah, I'm liking it. But let me know what you guys think so far about the Genesis Mini. I'm sure you've seen several videos of these pop up in your sub box, so I'm hoping I gave you a bit of a different look at it with the insides and everything, and my thoughts on it. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. I'm curious. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. Dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys next time.